Hi guys, welcome back to Scott Family Homestead. Today I wanted to do a little bit of an update on our pantry challenge and how we are doing with that now that we're about halfway through January. I actually have to be out of town today, and so I'm going to put a whole chicken in the crock pot. This was something that when I first started cooking was really intimidating to me, but as we started raising more and more chickens, we do a lot of whole chickens. And so I'm going to cook this in the crock pot all day today. My chicken is still partially frozen. And I do just a really simple process. I'm going to chop up an onion into rings. I will save all the scraps because when I am done with this, the scraps will go back in here, and with the bones, we'll fill this up with water and a couple of other scrap veggies and make broth for this weekend. We're just going to cut this into nice big rings. This kind of works as a rack in the bottom, and so it's basically partially for flavor and partially to keep that chicken off of the bottom of the crock pot. And so we don't do anything too specific here. It's just a little bit of lift for that chicken. Normally I take all my veggie scraps and put them in a bag in the freezer. So I will add that to that. We're going to put our chicken in. This is a big one. Let's see, we're going to get this in here. And then because this is frozen, I'm not going to worry about rubbing in seasoning. I'm just going to put some seasoning on it, flip it over, and then season the other side as well. Okay, for seasoning on the chicken, you can use whatever quantities you would like. I generally do garlic powder. This is ground from our garlic. I just reuse containers. And then onion powder. Again, this is onions that I've freeze dried. We're gonna do salt and pepper. Now normally you'd kind of want to like rub this in all over the chicken, but since it's still frozen, it's not going to do much. And then just a little bit of paprika. Flip this over and do it to this side as well. And then I'm just going to cook this on low for 6 to 8 hours, probably closer to 8 hours. If you see that it's getting done a little bit sooner than you were hoping, you can turn it on keep warm. But with it frozen like this, it's probably going to take a good long time. Smaller chickens, you can do probably closer to 6 hours, but this is a big one. I also want to show you some of the other meals that we have made in this pantry challenge. So we have been doing about $70 of groceries per week, which has cut our grocery bill in less than half. That's mostly fresh fruits and veggies and dairy products. And we've cut out most of our fast food spending. In the first 15 days of January, we only got takeout one time, which for us is pretty good. This doesn't fit in here. So I just want to mention a few of the meals and show you some pictures. Now you'll have to excuse me because these are pictures that me and my husband took. We are not food photographers, but I do want to share some of the meals because we've actually added quite a few new to us meals that the kids really liked, and so I would like to talk about that a little bit and maybe give you some ideas for your pantry challenge. A lot of these are meat rich because we grow a lot of meat and our freezers are full. One of the first things that we tried at the very beginning of January was pork chops marinated in that marinade that I showed in our pantry tour. It is actually just leftover marinade from the cowboy candy that I make. So it has a little bit of a kick to it. It wasn't too spicy. The kids really liked it, and it was just something different. So I just soaked the pork chops in that. I poured it right over top in a glass container and left it for a couple of hours. You could do it overnight. It gave it a really nice flavor, and we will definitely be doing that one again. We did a venison roast this time, and we used pickled hot peppers over top of it. So that was a suggestion that somebody in the comments had made, is to put the pickled hot peppers over a roast. That also had a little bit of a kick to it and was kid approved. So we really liked that one. We slow cooked it all day with our normal toppings on it. So I usually do ketchup, mustard, a little bit of brown sugar, some soy sauce, and then some basic seasonings, onion, garlic, same as what we kind of did in this chicken here. That day I also made a couple loaves of Dutch oven bread. I get that recipe from the Prairie Homestead cookbook. If you don't have this, I highly recommend it. It has a lot of just very basic, simple recipes with basic ingredients, but I've learned some new skills with this book. The buttermilk biscuits are really good in here. We make the pretzels, all kinds of different breads. The Homestead pie dinners are really popular with my kids because you can substitute in whatever kind of meat that you want. But definitely a staple in our kitchen. This is one of the cookbooks that I come back to time and time again. Usually every week I'm making something out of here. I'll show you a little bit about the bread making process. It takes a long time, but it's only 4 ingredients, and almost all the time is just rising. You don't even need it. So let me show you a little bit about the bread. This crusty Dutch oven bread is as simple as 4 ingredients. You're going to take 1 teaspoon of yeast and 3 cups of warm water. Let that sit for just a bit so that that yeast gets activated. You're going to add a tablespoon of sea salt and 6 cups of flour, and you're going to let it raise a really long time. So go 3 to 5 hours. The longer the better. Then you're going to split them up. There's no kneading involved. So you're going to mix all 4 ingredients together and let it rise in a bowl for 3 to 5 hours. You're going to get this really kind of sticky dough. You're going to split it into 2 balls the best you can, put on parchment paper. You're going to let this sit for another 40 minutes where it can rise and get bubbly. Again, you don't want to knead it. You want as many bubbles in there as possible. Preheating the oven right now at 475 degrees. And it has my Dutch ovens in it, getting nice and hot. After this, we are going to bake this at that high temperature for 30 minutes with the lid on your cast iron. And then you're going to remove that lid and go about another 15 minutes until it's really nice and dark and toasty on the top. So this recipe makes 2 loaves like this, or you can save half of the dough for later and make it at another time. They don't look super delicious in this stage, but I promise you they're going to bake up and be beautiful and delicious. In addition to my Dutch oven bread over here, I've got a venison roast. It has been cooking all day. A couple of potatoes in here and pickled hot peppers on top. I'm going to make a gravy to go with this. We're going to shred the meat once it's done, and we're going to put it over that nice crusty bread. You could let them get a little bit darker than this, but that's really what you want, is a nice dark crust on it. We're good to go after 45 minutes. We also made one of our staples this week. That is a potato soup. I can link the recipe for the one that I use. I use the recipe from this blog. And then I also add a little bit of bacon or ham, usually, to give it a little bit more protein and a little bit more flavor. If I'm adding bacon or ham, I don't add any salt to the recipe. And instead of using bouillon, I use our regular chicken stock, which is low in salt anyways. I don't add salt to that. So if you're just using homemade chicken broth, I recommend adding a little bit of salt or some meat that has been cured and has that salty kick to it. For the first time, I made a sausage homemade pizza. So we make a lot of homemade pizza, but I usually buy pepperoni to put on it. This time I took a pound of our homegrown sausage and I just cut it into discs. And then after it had cooked almost all the way through, I chopped those up into chunks and put them on pizza. Now it seems really simple, but it has never occurred to me to make sausage pizza at home. We used a whole pound and I just baked it on a cookie sheet. I use a super basic pizza crust recipe. Basically anything that you find online is going to be usable for this. And then we always keep a lot of cheese in the freezer, so we have the mozzarella cheese. And then tomato sauce and tomato paste from the pantry. I'm working through that tomato paste, and this was a perfect use for it. Making some pizza sauce. And then I use Azure Standard's pizza seasoning, and I buy it by the pound. So we have a ton of that, and we'll definitely be making that again. And then we did some of our go-to recipes. So meatloaf, we make a taco soup. This is a really good pantry recipe. You can use either chicken or ground beef, and you use that cooked meat. To that we add some chicken broth, corn, black beans, diced tomatoes, or I use my crushed tomatoes from the pantry, and then a can of salsa. You can do kind of any proportion of that, and then a little bit of taco seasoning. And we usually use crushed up tortilla chips in that and top it with some sour cream and cheese. I don't have specific proportions for that. I basically just use quarts and pints of whatever we have and mix it together. It's always a winner with the kids, and it comes almost entirely from jars in the pantry that I have canned up. So that was another one that we really loved this week. Two new to us recipes that I want to mention, and I will link in the comments. We made a taco skillet. So this was taco meat and rice, and that was a really easy, mostly from the pantry meal, and I definitely liked that one. The kids raved about it. And then last night, instead of doing pulled pork, because we do a lot of pulled pork with barbecue sauce, we did carnitas this time. I have never made those before. We cooked them in a little bit of orange juice. I did have to buy the orange juice for that. We don't usually keep that on hand. But that was another one where the kids said they would definitely eat it again. I did buy the tortillas for that, but I do like to make homemade tortillas, and I think it would work really great with that pulled pork carnita. So that one we will also be adding to the recipe book because the kids really loved it, and I will link that one below as well. For breakfasts, I had a ton of granola, and I plan to continue to make granola. My son is actually in a cooking class, and they did a granola recipe that was really good. So we're going to start making our own granola instead of buying the bags from Azure. We'll just buy the ingredients, and we should come out ahead on that a little bit. But the kids have eaten that instead of cereal. So they either eat it with milk, or we add some fruit to it. And so that's been a big breakfast food around here. Otherwise, the homemade bread was made into toast. Quick and easy things. We are missing eggs so much. Our chickens are not laying eggs, and I did not water glass any eggs this year. Last year I did gallons of water glassed eggs, and we used almost all of them, and I have major regrets about not doing that this year because we are missing the eggs for breakfast foods, baked goods, all the things. We are completely out of eggs, and with egg prices right now, I'm not buying them. So we are just holding out and waiting for the chickens to start laying again. Lunches have been a lot of leftovers, using things up, or basic things, fruits and veggies, maybe a sandwich or so with some home-baked bread. But basically, just really kind of going back to finishing what's in the fridge, finishing up the leftovers, and making something new and fresh for dinner. We have made a ton of new recipes, and I think that this has really helped us expand our palates and expand the use of our pantry to a wider variety of foods. So I'm really happy with the challenge so far. We're going to stick with it through the end of January and maybe into February. We have very loose rules. We are still allowing a little bit of takeout, just every couple weeks, and a little bit of grocery shopping, but we have definitely cut our grocery shopping bill in half or more. We've saved hundreds of dollars already, and we're really happy with how things are going. So let me know how your pantry challenge is going, or maybe no spend January, or if this is something you'd like to do in the future. Get the conversation started in the comments. Please make sure you're subscribed. We are so happy for each and every one of you that follows us. We appreciate you, we love you, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye guys.